People have asked me about this new online paper called the San Francisco Standard. And I've periodically glanced at it, looked at it, read some articles. I, it's obviously very well positioned, put together, and it's online only. They don't have any print editions. It's was founded by a billionaire guy by the name of Michael Moritz or Moritz. I think I'm pronouncing it right. So, I've read it and look, there's first thing that comes to mind is it's very slick. That isn't necessarily bad, but there's nothing elaborate. There's nothing profound. It's basically you could tell by the politics, and they have a political page and an editorial page. And this guy Moritz, um, he's well financed. He's a billionaire worth about $5 billion or thereabouts, and he leans to the left. He's written several op-ed pieces in the New York Times and has given to charity, et cetera, et cetera. Looks like he's a pretty together guy. But like everything else, everybody has their interests and their leanings. I have no issues, for example. I don't read the Washington Post much lately. Haven't. But the guy that is responsible for the Post being non-dead is the Bezos guy, the Amazon CEO. And, it definitely has a political stance. Again, nothing wrong with that. But the Post is nowhere near its once grand image when it was owned by, the very famous Post family, and had Ben Bradley and all that. I mean, it's predictable. And what I've gathered from, and I haven't done a real thorough research, but to me, if you're trying to become unique and standing out with a particular, and it could be political, it could be look and design and all that, this is nothing outstanding. It's not even close to being average. The articles are obviously done by capable journalists, and they have every sort of subject matter. I mentioned news and politics and food and sports and business, that kind of a thing. But one of the things that ticks me off, and it's not just the standard, it's these other so-called alternative online sites like Mission Local, like SFist. There's no, when you're an alternate paper, when you're an alternative outlet for the conventional news, and God knows the Chronicle is as horrid as ever, and it's cutting back, and it's becoming simply a skeleton of itself. It's hardly interesting anymore. But these various other publications, and they're all pretty much online. I didn't mention the Examiner, but that's completely putrid. If those of you that still read it, and there's nothing unique about the San Francisco Standard. Again, you look at it, my first impression is that it's slick. There's nothing outstanding. And I'm not asking for anything jumping up and down, metaphorically speaking, but I like something unusual. Their writers I've never heard of. That's okay. They seem to do a good job. And this guy, Moritz, has put together a nice staff, but there's nothing that grabs you. There's nothing that grabs your attention. It's basically a very modernized, predictable publication that skews left. I've seen that before in San Francisco. I'm not asking for a moderate paper. I'm not asking necessarily for something right wing. When the Fangs owned the Examiner and when it went tabloid, it was positively ghastly. The fact that it leaned way to the right was, who cares? It was a lousy paper, both in its print edition and both online. But this Standard doesn't grab me so far. And they've been around. And it's well funded. It's going to be around, apparently. It's built for the future. I don't know how they're making their money. I doubt this guy, Moritz, cares about whether or not he makes money because he's got about $4 to $5 billion. That's a lot of FU money. I'm sure he wants to at least break even. I don't know the business model. My point is, I haven't heard anybody, maybe you have, say, hey, did you see that piece in the Standard? Or did you read such and such in the Standard? Maybe I'm missing something, but I've glanced at it, have actually over the last few weeks have read more, tried to look at it and see from afar and see if there's anything that I was missing. And I have not heard much about it other than some various articles. There was a piece in the Mission Local, and that was sort of more a piece on Moritz than it was about the Standard. Again, there's 19 editors. He's got a staff of over 50 writers and sports people, and I have yet to find a personality columnist. It's just standardized, pretty much billionaire looking writing and look and style. It's, as I keep saying, very, very slick. I'd rather it be more pithy, more subject oriented, and not as slick as its looks. So, my review here, and it's not really a review, it's just a summation of what I think many of you have asked me. And I haven't really talked about the San Francisco Standard because I didn't really have an opinion one way or the other. Again, they have a lot of money. They have this guy who I guess he's referred to as a mover and a shaker. So, without saying too much, obviously the guy is a player in the San Francisco political and social scene. He gets around. I'm sure he has his own, instinctive kind of vices and things that he's in favor for. He seems to be close and a fundraiser for various politicians. Um, I've read that he's made donations to Lurie, the current San Francisco mayor. So immediately you have questions. Well, what is this guy? What's he seeking? I think he's looking for an ego lifter, which he's obviously captured in this paper, The Standard. And I think he's buying for whatever reason. He wants to get some influence. The little influence, perhaps more influence. He's obviously known with that kind of money. I'm going to finalize my initial review by saying, quite frankly, there's nothing here for me. I haven't seen anything. It's visually, I don't want to say stunning, but it's quite a nifty read and look. For that, I'll give this guy, a B plus. But there's nothing profound. There's nothing where you say to yourself, that's interesting. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's good or bad. It's just I didn't find anything that stood out. And I looked through pretty much all the various articles, news. Um, they do cover news. I'll give them credit for that. And if they could become long term and, dare I say, I'm being naive, show little bias, because everybody in every publication is biased. They have their own leanings. That would be a welcome situation. Other than that, I have really nothing else to say. It's something to which, is worthy of your attention, perhaps. If you have any critique, if you have feedback and you want to lay it out, maybe you agree or disagree with me. Maybe I'm, you know, maybe I'm a little too blasé about these types of endeavors, but like everybody else, I'm extremely cynical, and especially when it has to do with public notice and public articles and public institutions, journalism institutions like this latest, the San Francisco Standard.